long-time IP attendee. He's been here like ever since I've been here.
Long,
Veteran.
long unlimited too. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. I really appreciate it. I'm actually not the only guy. Our business partner, Robert Ruffino, is standing there taking photos of me. He's actually the brains behind the outfit. I am merely the good looks behind the outfit. And so we are doomed, as you can probably tell. I've been in high tech for a long time. Probably the most notable thing in my career is 12 years at Oracle. I started out in R&D there, but I've also worked in support, product marketing, product management, alliances, partnerships, corporate development, business development, let's say support, let's say QA, business training. So I've done pretty much everything except handle money. Okay, so hey, Robert, we had to find Robert to handle money, and I do everything else, I guess. We're here actually to celebrate the 30th anniversary of, does anybody know what this year is the 30th anniversary of? Somebody must know. Somebody must know. Louder. The internet? No, that's a good guess. And it's not Super Mario Brothers, though it is the 30th anniversary of Super Mario Brothers. That's not why we're here. We're here to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the movie Labyrinth. Anybody know that movie? Yeah? Isn't that cool? And David Bowie passed away this year, unfortunately. And really, it's just kind of the inspiration. As I was putting together the slides for this, one of the things we're trying to accomplish is to maybe capture the feeling that I had when I started working, first of all, in healthcare at a great startup with Vince Camano, who I met at a meeting like this about a year and a half ago. But I'm trying to get a feeling for the change of perspective that you get when going to a new industry, a new business. New business regulations, new compliance regulations, new partnerships, things you can do, things you must do, things you must not do, all very different in an organization. So, in the movie Labyrinth, I don't know if you remember, but there's a scene, one of many scenes in Labyrinth where they're walking through the labyrinth, and as the camera passes through and changes its perspective, what you see is this jumbled pile of rocks turned into this face, which is the face of David Bowie. I couldn't get a clip of the whole thing emerging, but if you don't know the movie, you won't get it. If you remember the movie, you remember the effect. It's a very striking effect. And so I think just the same way that change of perspective brings David Bowie's face into focus out of this jumbled pile of rocks, I think that's what I've tried to do in my career, is to look at what I know and what I'm trying to learn and see what the differences are, see what I can bring to it, and see how each of those two domain spaces or problem domains informs the other. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish here today. It's a little highfalutin. I also want to try to have some fun. Enough of that. Although the interesting thing I'll point out is that until you read this thing that tells you we are not selling securities, you didn't even know we were selling securities, and I wasn't going to tell you because we're not here to sell securities. But ironically, the law is such that we have to tell you we're not selling securities, informing you therefore that we're selling securities, so that makes the statement important. So what we do, the market we work in is in the real estate market. And the real estate market is very large, and so to hone in as quickly as we can on the part we work in, I want to talk about what we do in contrast with what you're probably familiar with in the retail market. Retail market is you are a person. You want to live in a house, right? You have a residence, and so what you do is you want to borrow money. That is heavily regulated on the consumer side. You go to a bank, you can do certain things, you can't do certain things, you must do certain things, you must not. We are over here where we are not regulated, but we can't lend to these people. So we don't. If you're going to buy a house, that's not our business. What we do is lending, and now there are many people who borrow money in real estate. I mean, real estate is kind of built out of money, if you will, or built out of financing, I should say. We are over here, and the particular group that we provide money to, we set out to provide money to, is called flippers. They're house flippers, and what they do is we try to solve this problem. When a house flipper, somebody wants to acquire a property and then fix it and then sell it, they need a stack of money to buy it, just like you do when you're buying a house. They better provide a down payment too. But in the industry, it's called a gap, okay? And this is gap funding, and this is the gap, and this is the gap we were minding, actually. And this is the problem, because when we have, Imagine how many houses would you buy if you didn't have to provide a down payment? Maybe you'd have 10, right? Depends on your ability to carry them. Well, the problem is that flippers can't flip as many properties as they want, but they are limited. And in some of the markets that we work in, which are truly distressed areas, there are many homes that are in need of repair. There are many homes that need to be brought back up to standard due to damages. Where we're working in New Jersey, for example, is still affected by the hurricane Sandy from several years ago. So we're trying to do a social good, and we're trying to help out as many people as we can, but this is a real barrier. It's a real limitation to doing business. The second part of this capital stack, if you will, and this is pretty much the same kind of a stack you'll see in any commercial real estate or any real estate deal anywhere, is the cost of repair. And in a big commercial property, that might be entirely different people. It might be 5 different people. And then there's also some profit at the top of that, we hope. That's the whole purpose of that. So what we are trying to fill that gap. That's essentially what we're doing. And the way we filled it is and this is our final product, and I'll give you a glimpse in advance, but we provide gap funding. We provide this money to the flippers so that they don't have to provide any money out of pocket. And in exchange, we take half or so, third, 2/3, depending on the project. We'll take about half the project profit. We are absorbing risk, and that's how we can do that. We don't really have time to get into all the details because it's a fairly specialized kind of a market, and a lot of it's not especially germane, but we will talk about it a little bit more. So I came on relatively recently. Robert's been doing this for a couple of years, and having come up and tell the earlier part of the story, and how we got into it and how we kind of got where we are, and then we'll talk you through quickly some of the major decisions that we went through and some of the major pivots and why that we went through over the last 6, 8, 9 months or so.
I'm going to do that in about 10 seconds, but this is a moment, so I'm going to record it.
This is your bio also.
Okay, now everyone wave. All right. Thanks.
You tend to forget these little things in your life. Right, so...
Bio first, don't forget that.
Oh, my bio. So, yeah, in another life, I was a green guy. Anyone know LEED?
Yeah.
Right, so I was a LEED accredited professional. I ran a consulting company. We did 137 buildings on the East Coast. I came to California to do green and energy efficiency and solar. And we were working on big capital projects, big commercial projects and municipal projects. Lehman Brothers crashed, which means all the funding went away. I was broke. I was more than broke. I was $500,000 in personal debt. And I had to figure out something. So, late night TV, get into real estate, make millions. I explored it, and I'm doing okay. So, I came out of that I've always been an entrepreneur, always had my own business. So I moved into real estate and got a lot of blessings and met a lot of good people and connected with a lot of folks and was able to crawl out of that hole and get here. So, I'm from the East Coast, if you can't tell, and I went back home about 3 years ago. So in Los Angeles, in 2013, the real estate market recovered 35%. In like a 14-month period, housing pricing went up 35%. And that was it. The market had recovered. So if you're trying to find investment properties here in Southern California, it's very difficult. There's not enough deal flow. But back home in New Jersey, there's still a ton of deal flow. This is why we're talking about going to New Jersey. And it's very similar to the San Gabriel Valley. It's train lines and mass transit into New York City, just like you would travel in from Covina into downtown LA to do a job. So we go back in time, we're looking at this opportunity, and there's so many deals out there, and knowing what I know now, the question is, how do I do as much real estate investing as I possibly can do? So then it comes not the toilets and the tile and buying the houses, it's how to raise the money. And that started me on this journey about 2 years ago.
And if I can say one thing,
yeah.
New Jersey has been rated the top 1, 2, 3 foreclosure state for the last couple of years. And so there's really an extraordinary amount of property here. So the real challenge if you want to expand the number of those little stacks that we had a couple slides ago, how do you do that? Well, the only way you can expand the stack is to get a lot of money at once. And so that's a real challenge. Individual investors like us and a lot of other people that Robert works with can provide deals one at a time, but we're trying to move beyond that. We're trying to scale that. We're not really sure. So.
Sure, so the best case scenario is we would be able to do 10 a year. And that just wasn't enough. So we had to figure out a way to 10x that to do 100 a year, and it came down to crowdfunding. We're working in an industry that up until last May 16th, there was no clear definition of the law. So everyone who said they were an expert prior to that point was just sort of guessing. And so we had to build this fund to go raise money to work in New Jersey.
And he's been working through all the different nuances of crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Again, which many of you probably know about already. We're working through all different flavors of that, and this is just one indication of how complex it is. Anyone familiar with crowdfunding? How much time do you want to spend on this? Do you want to skip over it, or? Okay, so it's worth a little bit, but I really want to get through to the flips and the pivots.
So here's the big thing about crowdfunding. It's really, really simple. You get to raise money and advertise, right? That's the big difference between raising money prior to May of this year to now. You can use this vehicle and advertise, right? For us, we're doing a blind pool. So we picked 506C. What does that mean? That means that our investors trust us to give us their money, and then we use their money as we see fit.
In contrast with other syndications and other investments where there's specified property. We're going to buy this hotel. We're going to buy 5 homes, these 5 homes in New Jersey, or this one home in Tulsa, and this is what you're investing in. It's blind, and so it is, as you said.
Right, and really quickly, the first pivot in this whole process was the fact that if you wanted to do a Reg A, that was about $250,000 in legal fees and marketing, which we didn't have.
Which is the heaviest weight funding that large companies use. Okay.
I think you just shot that.
Went dark. What happened?
And then the one that we're doing is really, really reasonable. So under $50,000 to get a crowdfund to start raising $5 million. So we had to figure out the law. We knew we had an opportunity in New Jersey, a great market. We had to figure out the law then to raise money, but nobody defined the law yet. We were still waiting for the SEC to actually come out with the regulations on. Congress passed the law in 2012, and 4 years later, we're finally going to define the law. So everyone who is hoping that it broke the right way, you either win or you lose. So we did the 506C, which is just right. It's perfect for our 4-year projects. It allows for a blind pool, and we work with accredited investors. This is really, really critical when you're thinking about crowdfunding. Who do you want to work with? You have to answer to the investors. This is great that we're flipping homes and we're helping neighborhoods and hurricane damage areas in New Jersey and other places in the country. But at the end of the day, someone out of their retirement fund invested $100,000 in us. And it's super critical that we're taking care of their money. It is probably the most important thing, and sometimes gets forgotten in these conversations, is what's the investor want? So we work with a type of investor known as an accredited investor. Does everyone know what an accredited investor is? Right. Why do we want to work with an accredited investor? Because they've already invested in things before. There's a sophistication level that they understand that there is a possibility of a loss, and that they have a means that if they took a complete bath on this, they're not going to be on the street. So an accredited investor makes $200,000 a year as an individual, $300,000 a year as a couple, and has has a $1 million net asset, not including their primary residence.
Okay, so that's the people we're looking for on the investment side, and there's an interesting connection between the two sides of our company. Most companies when you're raising funds, you don't tell them, well, we're going to buy, let's see, we're going to buy aluminum from these guys, and we're going to manufacture it, and we're going to melt it down, and then we'll do this, we'll do that. You just say we're going to start a manufacturing company. When we go to raise funds, we have to describe our product in the PPM, because our product is a financial product. So we're taking their money. So we have to decide in advance what our financial product is going to look like. And we don't have the benefit of prototyping to do it. We can't just write a little bit of code and do something, because if we go to raise money, we have to state publicly what we're going to do. And then once we raise that money and state it publicly, we can't change our mind. We can't say, whoops, we decided that this loan isn't going to work, so we have to do this loan, because we already sold a lot of securities to a bunch of investors who think we're doing this and not that. That's a serious problem. And that's probably, I think, the biggest challenge in the way that our two markets work, is that we have that regulatory control over not our product, but the way we raise funds for our product, and they're connected in two halves that the two halves of most companies aren't connected. Extra credit for, what's this? Who knows what this is?
Elon Musk's rocket.
Who knows what the name of the thing you're landing on?
Of course, I still love you.
Of course, I still love you.
Of course, I still love you. Extra credit. I don't know what that is.
It's the name of a ship.
No. I don't know why the extra credit will be.
So let me just talk about the disclosure real quick. So real quick on the disclosure, the really important thing is you have to tell them, your investor, everything you're going to do. Everything.
Which is the genesis of what I was saying.
Which leads to all kinds of problems, because now we have to figure out how to do everything and basically lay it all out.
Yeah. And the problem is not telling them. We're all about transparency. The problem is the iterative process, the finding product market fit that we've got to go through, just like any other product company does. We are constrained very heavily by the fact that for us to run one of these projects takes 6, 8, 9 months. We have to do 4 or 5. And if we were to do 4 or 5, then A, the opportunity's passed, and B, it's just too late. It's too expensive to do that. If we need to change, we've got maybe $1 million we brought in from investors. Now we need to tell them, our first idea wasn't so good, so that's what we're trying to do. So here's a recap of where we were, okay? Here's the gap, we provide the funding, we take half the products out. So version 1 was a rehab loan. In 10 seconds or less, because we are stretched for time, we passed quickly over this.
It's the money you need to fix the place. The money you need to buy the toilets.
And we focused on that basically because it was kind of easy, and it's also good use of capital. You can charge, I should reveal all the secrets, but we're all about transparency. You can charge interest on, say, the entire time you're committing the funds, but you only give out money in tranches. So as a result, you're actually using capital at a lower rate than you're charging for it. So as long as you can provide the money when it's needed,
sure,
you can statistically understand why, like a bank, right? So it's the same concept there. And why didn't this work? They wanted to, the lenders that we work with are key. The specialized lenders that provide this financing and actually this financing, they are key to the whole industry. They're like the banks are to a retail sale. And getting their cooperation turned out to be important. So it's really a matter of going after the partnership, in this case, and saying, no, you're not going to get that business. I want that business. Go away. So
we went up to the door and we were told to go away.
Pretty much, yeah. So in doing this presentation, I realized that here we were actually aiming our arrow, our solution arrow, not at the problem. So we started to aim it at the actual problem, and that worked much better, didn't it?
Yeah, they were all of a sudden, the lenders were very, very happy if we were bringing this portion of the stack, because this is the portion they need.
But the big problem, most lenders don't want other people lending. Just like your Bank of America doesn't want you to have a lot of, if you have a $100,000 house, they don't want you to have $500,000 in liens. Well, the value of this house is still speculative, so they don't want this much financing on it, right? They are mitigating their risk by putting just this much financing on something they know is worth this much. So they're still concerned about a lien. So that one died. And the first real breakthrough we had was we decided to make this equity. And how did you figure that out? In 10 seconds or less.
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, if you have a great idea and someone brings the money, you give them 50%. That's just the world I know. So I said, hey, we're bringing the money. You've got a great project. We want an equity split. And that equity split solved the problem of being a second lender on the property.
But there's a lot of negotiations after that to discuss exactly what we had to do. Because the lenders only lend up this much as an easy way to mitigate their risk. If we're going to take this risk on, what do we have to actually do? Because we can't just say, oh, fine, we'll fix all your problems. We have to understand what it means to accept the risk that we're taking on when we're doing that. And that really helped us. First of all, we spent a lot of time going through all this legal and requirements that lenders had. And took up the trip to New Jersey, which was our first market. Second breakthrough was when we went to this fund. We first went and said, hi, we've developed this fund. We kind of had figured out what we wanted to do. We figured out all the finances of it and what we thought would work financially and be sellable and useful. And you went to actually Colby Amory, who's actually sitting here in the front row, and tell that story.
So we said, hey, we have a fund. This is what we're going to do. We're going to fund the gap. And Colby's from Houston, and we networked around the country together. And he said, well, I want one in Houston. Why wouldn't I take one in Houston? That makes perfect sense. There's a lot of upside to it. So then all of a sudden, we're no longer just having one fund. We're managing multiple funds, and we need a company that manages those funds.
And we also have a different relationship. We may own one of this to take responsibility. For instance, in New Jersey, we are taking responsibility for raising funds here. In Houston, Colby's taking some responsibility for raising funds. And there's various ways of handling that. So, in effect, we kind of pivoted to a company that is selling funds, if you will. No, we don't actually sell the funds. We don't sell actual advice, but we have the experience. We help it up. We have all the contacts. We know what the parameters are and how it all works. And so suddenly we came from a one-off fund company. We decided, let's go do a fund in New Jersey, and maybe in another year, if it works out, we'll do another one someplace else. We suddenly became a fund-selling company. And that was a huge transformation for us. We really believed that we knew that it would scale, and by selling it essentially to other people, we could scale it much, much more rapidly. And this wasn't a surprise. This is what I know from history and from my experience. But to get this into real estate is not an easy thing. The market the industry does not work that way. It also meant we had to spend a lot of time mitigating risk. And I won't get involved in that, but basically we have on-site visits. We watch the project very carefully, and we extract some fees for that. So as a result, the lenders, who are very concerned about making sure that somebody is on the hook for that 30% of risk, the lenders know that because we're there every week, because of the things that we do and say we're going to do, they understand that we are prepared to accept that risk. And so that's why I say we are not really a lending company anymore, we're really a risk mitigation company.
With systems.
At this point, with systems.
Yeah, lots of systems.
So as we separated the company, called this thing called JV Fund Services, and said, it will deal with the flippers, and with the funds will, and it will also deal with funds, and we'll manage these funds for it. And the final big breakthrough, and our final slides, is we become a fund platform. Because all along, we knew we wanted to scale. And so the first way of scaling from New Jersey is to say, let's do it in Houston, Tulsa, wherever. Let's do it in 15 cities. But now, we realized, we figured out how to scale that quickly. And we've also realized that these other fund models that we have talked about in the past, we can do the architecture work, if you will, to set up the processes and services and everything that we can do. Figure out how to mitigate risk for this particular asset category. That's essentially what we're saying. This is a new category of asset. And then once we do that, then we have a new business. So for example, notes is another aspect of real estate investing that's somewhat parallel to buying and selling real estate, but they operate a little bit differently. So we're learning with one investor how notes work. We'll provide a whole series of risk mitigation transactions. We'll have a great big book. And then someone will say, buy these 50 notes, we'll buy them. Sell these 10, we'll sell them. We're not making the decisions, we're just performing all the work, but we're doing it in a transparent way. We're doing it in an arm's length way so that it's very clear that we are not part of the other organization. There's no chicanery, so compliance will be easy. And everything we've done has been set up with compliance and all that easy. So,
when he says it, it sounds really smart, right?
We all know that's what product marketing is about, just making your product sound like the customers really want it.
Right.
So that's, I think, where we are. We're happy to take as many questions now or offhand.
So what are the other, give us another example, I'm sorry.
This is round of applause. Yeah, we'll open up to Q&A right now. We'll walk around with the microphone. John will walk around with the microphone. If you have a question, raise your hand. We will get it answered for you. Questions now, comments offline. You guys will stick around for a little bit afterwards, right?
I live here. He's got some stuff to do today.
Okay, cool. So if you guys want to swap stories, do it offline.
And one last thing I'll say to T is that listening to a story, I'm thinking maybe there's like a diaper API somebody could come up with somewhere, right? Because as a new parent, what you need all the time is diapers. So if I could go on my phone and say diaper now, I can just have it, appear at my door. And maybe that's the killer app for drones, for drone delivery.
So here was a follow-up question. Can you give us some other examples of what other securitized or assets, you said assets or fund A, fund one, like what are some other examples or things without giving away that?
So notes, we're working with somebody who buys notes in big groups, and you know, some of the notes are good. They bundle them because there's some dogs in it, right? Just like our CDOs were back in the meltdown, right? There's some good ones and there's some bad ones. So the idea is that it's a lot of transaction work to do that. What else?
Energy production.
Energy production, yeah, another thing.
Is another fund. And essentially, if you're going to run with this model, here's our golden rule. You have to show an internal rate of return of at least 24%, preferably 30. Once you get to that number, then we can spread it. We can basically pay the people who need to get paid along the way and still make money.
Over here.
So it's pretty much anything, but the value to JP is that we do transactions. So if you're familiar with real estate, we're kind of like the escrow company. You throw all this paper at the escrow company, and they put it all together and say, yes, I have all the documents I need and everything. Same thing here. We've created a bunch of services that we provide and say, we're going to do this. Then we do it. But there has to be a lot of work in it. So, for example, we would not get involved in the syndication business trying to sell transactions to syndications because there are none really. You buy a hotel and you have people manage the hotel. So there's nothing in it for us. So we wouldn't necessarily do that.
It's maybe the flow of capital in and out.
Thank you.
Or you talk to somebody about actually investing in a film. This is fine, it's investment, but that's not for us because there are no transactions in it. Here's $6 million, you do the film, and your money comes back later. We're trying to do.
Yeah,
this machine. So we're building a machine that builds a machine, right? And so this is the machine that builds a machine, and this is what we're feeding. We're feeding our company transactions. It's a model I've used at other companies before.
Okay.
From what I understand, the Jobs Act specifically excluded investment funds. How does this get around that?
Because that's actually Reg CF. Going out to individuals, to individual non-accredited investors has that restriction. When you're going out, when you are doing a 506c fund that is designed to approach accredited investors, you can send that out to the world, and you can get that information out. You just can't let anybody in who's not accredited.
And this includes equity crowdfunding.
Well, yes, any kind of crowdfunding. What we have is a blind. What you're talking about essentially is a blind pool as opposed to an identified asset. That's a difference.
So the flipping model is great. In LA, like you said, when the recovery, the values jump so high, and so there's really no margin for the investors. So in these other places like New Jersey and Texas and Tulsa, you have that margin. So my question is when that margin goes away, or when the values do appreciate, are you guys just going to jump from city to city until it's finished, or do you guys have long-term growth?
Yeah, so just so you know, the acronym DARE is Distressed Asset Real Estate. So we're looking for distressed markets, and the answer is yes. And when that margin starts getting really, really slim, and if we're still in the middle of a 4-year DARE fund, we have the right, disclosed in our fund document, to immediately shut down the fund, pay everyone off, and close it out and move on to the next one. Because we don't want to be the folks that are hoping, right? We want to be on that upswing. But once you hit here and that you start going on that downside, that's when all the problems happen. People hang on too long. So we will be very, very quick, like a matter of weeks, just shut it down, let our last projects get off the market, and then pay everyone back.
And it's written that way. It says we think we'll go out for 4 years, but if the market lasts longer, we'll go out and say, do you want to stay in longer? And if it's not, if it's folding up sooner, no, it's stupid.
It's all about other people's money we have to protect.
Back here.
Sure.
Good morning. Really interesting concept. I'm seeing a lot of activity in the real estate space with Home Union, Realty Mogul just launched their
Rich Uncle
REIT. So, are you guys doing just residential? Do you plan to do any commercial? That's the first question. And secondly, in terms of regulation, do you see with all this new activity in the real estate innovation space, some new innovation coming into play that you're going to have to address and maybe have to switch your model out?
Yes, almost every month there's someone who tells us there's something coming down the line, or this bill's in front of Congress, or this is going in front of the states that we're working in. we have to be incredibly cognizant of that stuff. Yeah.
It's really kind of, especially this state where it's regulated and it's still in a state of flux. You surely need to have to keep on top of it. There's I don't know the state of the bill, but Reg CF is the retail crowdfunding, the one that there are low limits on. Investors are only permitted to invest a certain amount of money. There's talk about increasing that limit and correcting some of the issues in that. I mean, right now, the individual crowdfunding is just like trying to fill a barrel with a teaspoon of money at a time. It doesn't work for us. Too slow, not enough at a time. We need, if a deal comes in, we need to move on it within a few days. That capital accumulation curve doesn't work for that kind of project. But for other projects it can. We're hopeful, but right now that's why we're stuck with accredited investors. And the first question, I'm sorry, was?
Commercial.
Commercial. Yeah, how big an elephant do we want to eat?
We don't think the commercial market is fully recovered or is on the upswing. There's still too many properties out there where they're taking simply a depreciation and making their investors and property owners are using depreciation as a way to make money on those properties. When that demand comes along in certain areas, obviously not in Southern California, we're recovering, but in other distressed markets, when that starts to come off the ground, yeah, we're going to take a really good look at it. But we just don't think it's there. We still think there's tons of inventory in the markets that we're in commercial that just doesn't warrant this at this time.
It's also a different group of funding people. It's very, very, very large investors. You have hedge funds, you have pension funds, you have that sort of thing who are buying those. And they need to move tens and 20s and 30s of millions of dollars. We can't have a fund that big. It's just too much money. It's just single family homes. They cost, what, $300K, $200K.
Right.
So do the math. We had $75 million. That we flip every house in New Jersey once, then 9 months later the fund would be done.
But for example, we're looking to flip 120 homes in Houston. We think there's enough deal flow to keep that going, possibly twice that. In New Jersey and Dallas, it's about 90. And we just don't think there's enough deal flow in that commercial space.
Back here.
Great presentation. I have a ton of questions, but I'll just limit it to 2. How do you source the deals, and at a high level, what's your lending criteria?
We tend, so it's not a typical channel play. We don't pay the hard money lenders, but the real customers, if you will, are the flippers. They're the ones who actually benefit, or that's when we approach and sell. But the hard money lenders really are our channel partners, because they can also write 20 or 30 or 40 more % business when the need for that chunk of cash is gone, as long as they are comfortable with that particular flipper and with our particular risk mitigation services. So it's kind of a channel play, and we are essentially using the hard money lenders to direct deal flow toward us, though we'll advertise and all that sort of thing, saying, come and get your 100% funding. But it's primarily working through the lenders.
So for the flippers who are bringing the deals to us, we do a pre-qualification weekend, where we basically sit down with them in a room and go through all the steps and what their requirements are. We do a criminal background check, a credit background check, and a driver's license background check before we even think about joining forces with them to do these projects. So there's a initial upfront, show me that you know how to do the business, make sure you're not a criminal, and then we can start doing this stuff. And as we live in a world of unsecured loans, right? That's our world. This is unsecured. When we talk about hard money and the gap, that's all unsecured. It's based on the value of the property. So there are a lot of people in this world who can come in and come out. We just want to know who we're doing business with. And again, it's other people's money. My investors want to know, are we doing money using their money with the right people? So there's a 2-day pre-qualification process. We actually sit down. I'm just old school. I want to talk to and meet the people that I'm going to be doing business with face to face. So we go into those markets and we have a weekend and we sit and bring people through and talk to them.
And that's an additional small source of revenue as well, because we charge for that. But it's a mandatory orientation. If you're going to do business our way, you need to be taught how to do business our way, and we don't do that in our dime.
Hi, my name is Dominique Higgins. I've been working in real estate consulting for about 6 years now here in California. I'm actually very curious, how are you faring in the California, specifically Southern California real estate market? Because we do have a lot of distressed sales here, mostly towards the Inland Empire, but we also have a lot of competition from Silicon Valley companies, their funds, Boston private market funds. What is your long-term plan here?
Right, so does everyone know who the #1 landlord is in Los Angeles County? It's Warren Buffett. Warren came in his company Blackstone, and they bought about 6,000 single-family units in the last 5 years. We don't do Southern California because we think the margins are too thin and the deal flow is not enough. I personally have flipped a lot of homes here, and I know the market very, very well. But in Southern California, it wouldn't work for us. The big gap in this market, I'm sure you're aware, and I get a laugh when I tell this, but I had a really smart person tell me there's not enough $3 million homes in this market. And that's, if you're going to be doing flips in this market, we recommend you buy a $1 million house and make it a $2.5 million house.
And it's just very different. It's just very, very, very different. Very different.
We'll actually close Q&A. If you can hold on to that question and save it for offline, we appreciate it. So again, thank you so much for the questions and answers from the audience.